Hi there, Christian Henson from Spitfire Audio here. I'm incredibly excited today. I know we always say this, but this just... I'm going to keep it short today. Very simple concept, and it was something that was, I think, kind of whimsical almost on my part, was this idea of, I've always been concerned with getting the kind of aperture correct with a scene. So you don't put a kind of 300-piece orchestra under a conversation in a living room, and you don't put a kind of an oboe and a harp over a scene, of a battlefield, if there's lots of sound effects, all of that kind of stuff. And as a consequence, I've been really interested in aperture shifts. And I think if there's two scenes I can kind of think of that inspired this library, it's the scene when Dorothy opens the door in Wizard of Oz. I don't know if you're familiar with the film, but it starts in black and white, and then she kind of opens this door and it's in colour. But they couldn't kind of touch things up in those days, no CGI, so they actually painted her and the room she was in black and white makeup. And then she opens up into this Technicolor kind of amazing. So it's a really small, claustrophobic black and white room into the wonderful world that she goes into. And there's another film I can think of, which is 1984. It's a terrible film, very disappointing film with John Hurt. But there's this fantastic moment where he's going into room 101, and it kind of opens up on the South Downs. And again, I've always wondered, how you could create a sense of the aperture opening within music. So the seed of aperture was germinated from those kind of concepts. And when we came up with the idea of the Black Edition, an exclusive incentive for people shopping with us this Black Weekend, I suggested, well, why don't we have a string library where it starts with a tiny band playing very, very quietly and opens up into our full kind of symphonic series. So B-Cam's going to very much be zoomed in here today because, as always with orchestral libraries, controller is king, but with Aperture, it's king, queen, and country. I often use both expression and modulation. We're just going to concentrate on modulation today because the dynamic range on this library is quite extraordinary. Is we're not only moving through dynamics here, but we're actually moving through aperture. And what we mean by that is small, tiny band to huge band. So here's our strings normal. Flautandos are particularly personable. And the staccatos are particularly special. Now, on something like this, I would recommend, it's lovely and it's really vibey to have those shorts controllable by velocity, but I also think this function is incredibly useful on this library, where we're, instead of actually controlling the dynamic layers by velocity, we're, again, even with the shorts, controlling it with the wheel here. So check in the link below for Paul's walkthrough, and he'll go into much more detail about the sounds that are available, and also that we basically have a couple of different patches here. We've got the Aperture Ensemble, which is what you see here, the Pinhole Ensemble, which is just this very magical lower layer. You can create entire arrangements just from that, but because of it being the very lowest layer, we've set it up so you can play it as a more kind of fulsome ensemble using expression, etc., etc. And then we've got these refractions, which are these baked shapes of aperture shifts. So starting with the pinhole shorts, these are just with the CC map velocity. I'm not actually this is just a kind of a pedal ostinato, so I'm not moving the kind of aperture or the dynamic layers up or down at all. It's just a flat signal. Just lovely, that beautiful tiny band playing really soft brush shorts. I've added some delay in there. Add the kind of minimalist feel to it. And then you'll see here that I've got some aperture shorts. And you'll notice this line here, absolutely massive dynamic shift here. So let's bring it in here. from something really quite cerebral and, you know, internal into something absolutely mammoth. And I've doubled those up with octave shorts up here and automated those up. But again, the idea is that we're kind of doing a trailer where the aperture opens and then I'm going to close it again. And what we end up on here are the flautandos, which again we've dynamically controlled, so the aperture is kind of full out, and then it really goes down to, I think you almost hear just kind of one or two people. Quite extraordinary, and I've doubled that up with these extraordinary harmonics. What I particularly like about harmonics is there is a real frailty to them. When you've got less players, you can hear some of the artifacts, the inaccuracies, incredibly hard things to play. So you pick those up with a smaller band. Yeah, there's a frailty, there's a slight kind of deviations in pitch, but the minute you add in huge numbers, those deviations in pitch just become a silky haze, so it doesn't sound as fragile. So it goes from something that's really incredibly confident to something that's incredibly fragile. I've also got some tremolandi here with some automation here. Really absolutely enormous. And then col legno, which again I'm controlling with the modulation wheel, or CC1, from these notes here to these and to these. Just a single pizzicato, but again, you can go from very soft and then finally we've got some low notes here. And what I think is another great thing to do is actually to be able to adjust aperture through the different articulation styles. So from going to flautando to normal, just normal style of playing, but you can also go flautando through muted or consort here into long. And I've done that here. You can see the automation there. So let's just listen to the flautandos and have a look at the automation. So it does get big, it does get epic, but it doesn't quite have that there. So that's what I'm doing here with the normal. Last but not least, the only non-aperture element of the piece is just a low sine wave from my trusty EXS24. If you're listening to this on a train, you probably didn't hear that. As for reverb levels and stuff, because the differences in sound are so severe, you'll see that I've been very selective about what has reverb, what hasn't got it. Real differences in the amount of reverb sends. So up here with the pinhole shorts, I've not put anything on. I want to keep them really up front. But with the harmonics here, a lot of reverb. Less so with the col legno, even less with the pizzicato, and then back up to a kind of nominal average level with the normal and the flautando. So last thing I want to do is I'm just going to add some mastering. Again, because we're dealing with massive dynamic shifts, I want to just flatten it out ever so slightly so that you're not kind of getting people to turn their stereos up and then blow their speakers. So a little bit of the EQ and a little bit of Renaissance compressor, and then finally to have my stake in the loudness wars L3 Ultra Maximizer to give it a kind of some limiting. So what I'm going to have here is just some mastering there. Always take the very bottom off around there. Maybe put a little bit of sparkle up there, and I might just take a bit of the low end out there. So I'll run that down. As I say, I mean, for me, it is one of the most inspiring string libraries I've used in a long time. Great for writing with, great for doing incredible kind of emotional pulls with the Aperture shifts. This is only available during Black Weekend, so it's an ultra exclusive. So check out the details down below. Thanks, as always, for watching. Do subscribe if you haven't done already, and ding that bell if you want to be notified the next time we put a video up. One of those, always much appreciated too. Thank you.